It's Monday, and you know what that means. Jersey First TV proudly brings to you the latest edition of Real Talk. And certainly, I am New Jersey's premier award winning journalist, Top 50 Latino, as voted on by the Latino Spirit Online magazine, along with the United States Latino Affairs Initiative. And without a doubt, ladies and gentlemen, the weapon of mass disruption, because my level of honesty is necessary in this era of deception. It's me, Fernando Uribe. Happy Monday, ladies and gentlemen. Happy MLK Day. It's great to be off, so I'm enjoying the day off here and relaxing. But certainly, journalism never takes a rest on this program. I want to thank you all for tuning in here on the 15th of January. And of course, thank you for tuning in from wherever and however you may be doing so right now on Facebook Live via StreamYard and also via the Jersey First YouTube page. And speaking of social media platforms, folks, I can't say it enough. Make sure you like us on Facebook. And of course, follow Jersey First on Instagram and Twitter. You can check out my own handles. In addition to making sure that you follow Jersey First on YouTube, click the subscribe button, and you'll be notified of all the great content brought to you by Jersey First TV every single week. And of course, whether you get your podcasts on Spotify or SoundCloud, download them and take Jersey First TV with you anywhere at any time, whether you're doing errands, visiting that significant other, visiting in-laws. Maybe some parents will be helping their kids move back to school and back to campus, as they say, even in this sort of inclement weather we're expecting. Hey, take Jersey First TV with you at anywhere, at any time. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot say enough how proud I am to be on the dream team of Garden State Media. That's right, folks. It's Jersey First TV. Brand new episodes of The Nader Narrative premiere every Thursday, hosted by the incredible Elizabeth Nader, and brand new episodes of Bridging the Gap with AJ Malillo and Stephen Rombolo also premiere on Thursdays. And of course, every Monday, rain or shine, doesn't matter, folks. Brand new episodes of Real Talk via Jersey First TV with Fernando Uribe premiere every Monday night live. Folks, you want to stick around for final thoughts because I do have a lot to say this evening about young people voting in Newark as young as 16 years of age. And of course, you know, how some journalists really, feign outrage about other things. They should really be outraged about this and what's going on in the city of Newark. But more on them later during final thoughts, folks, and a lot more. But first, ladies and gentlemen, I don't get to talk to a lot of journalists in New Jersey, but, once in a blue moon, I do like to talk to my peers. And joining me live right now, folks, he is the distinguished founder and publisher of the Hudson County View, fellow Rutgers alumnus, member of the Pinnacle. Of course, folks, I have to admit, while I'm New Jersey's premier journalist, he's definitely the most handsome face that runs the place. He's John R. Heinis, joining me now live on Real Talk. Johnny, how are you? Johnny, how are you? I hope I have him there. John, you with us? John, you with us?
Hey, how are you?
How are you, John? What's going on?
Not too much, man. How's everything?
Good, man. Hope you're having a good MLK day. Nice day off for a lot of us. So, always nice to rest. But folks, journalism never rests here on this show, and neither with the Hudson County View. Make sure you check out all of John's wonderful content at his website, www.hudsoncountyview.com, for everything in Hudson County. Of course, a lot of statewide issues, too, that he covers on that excellent news site. Johnny, a lot to cover here tonight. And certainly, let's start a little local and then sort of work our way to some statewide issues. And, man, I got to tell you, man, we talked about it off the air a lot when we're hanging out on the weekends or just on, via text. But, it's January 2024, and it seems like the race to occupy the mayor's office in Jersey City is a little, under 2 years away, man. I don't know about you. For people like you and I that love to opine on politics and write about it and talk about it, this is like, great. But for a lot of regular New Jersey City residents, this might be a little short of exhaustion, as November 2025 seems like a lifetime away. I don't know, dude. This race between thus far the candidate declared, former Governor Jim McGreevey, and current County Commissioner Bill O'Day, again, might be some other people declared for the race soon. Gotta tell you, man, I'm exhausted already, and it's only January 2024.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's obviously really tough when you're going to do a 2-year campaign for anything, even if it's for president of the United States. When you're talking about the mayor of a mid-sized city, of course, one of the larger cities in New Jersey, but that's a big undertaking. We've heard through the New Jersey Globe, it's been reported that Jim McGreevey's raised $850,000. I've previously reported that Bill O'Day, at the end of the third quarter last year, he had just ballparking. It was about 450,000. So I'm sure he's also improved on that as well. Jim McGreevy is the top fundraiser at this moment. But look, this is just a big undertaking. I mean, I don't know, as a Jersey City resident, how many people really want to be getting hit with mail for a race in November 2025 and like March or April in 2024. That seems like a bit of a, I mean, that's just a lot of time to kill, and there's only so much messaging you could do. I mean, obviously, you could hit every single platform, whether that be public safety, whether that be traffic, government waste, whatever. But these topics only lend themselves to so much, I feel like. And to do that for 22 months, and really it's 2 years because Bill and Jim respectively announced in November, right? So 2 years, it's just a really long time. Now, granted, you do get a little leeway when you announce your ticket. I imagine no one's going to announce it all at once. I'm sure they're going to do a gradual rollout. That seems to be traditionally what happens now. But nonetheless, I mean, it's just a big undertaking, and you have to overcome a lot of voter fatigue, which is already an issue at the ballot box. As you know, I mean, everyone complains about voter turnout in New Jersey, but to keep people engaged and interested for 2 years is a big, big undertaking for anybody.
No, John, you're right about that. And listen, we also have something called the presidential election this year that's going to, I'm sure, overwhelm us when it comes to ads on social media, mailers of any kind, whether it's from the state Democratic Committee, the state Republican Committee, right, and even the local chapters as well. I just look at this race as one that I'm sure that, it's not just going to be a two-man race. I anticipate other candidates jumping into this, perhaps members of the city council, maybe others that aren't elected officials. It just seems like this is a race that's going to, I think, really bother some people, to your point about, hey, we'll get inundated with mailers, emails, things of that nature. I just think it's something that right now it's going to just overwhelm people. And again, we have also House races this year. We have a Senate seat we'll talk about a little bit later. Of course, a presidential race. So never mind the fact that, people in Hudson County will get tribal automatically, especially in Jersey City, about these races. But to start thinking about, the mayor's office and those council races as well, I think seems to be just, I think, a lot on people's plate. And I would also argue as well that, we're looking at, to your point about tickets, it's still very, very early. Who's going to show their allegiance to whom, I think still remains to be seen. We've heard a lot of speculation about who the council president is going to side with if the council president decides to run on our own. Other members of the city council, I think, maybe exploring, mayoral races. And I'll sort of throw, these names out there. I'll just sort of just pontificate with you. But case in point, James Solomon, he's a progressive hero in downtown Jersey City in Ward E. I mean, his act plays well down there. And, he has all the progressive voters and a lot of the woke crowd, and that's great. Not sure if that'll play well throughout Jersey City. And I would argue that, let's say, for example, if he jumps into the race, he would really weaken Bill O'Day because they're sort of on the same trajectory when it comes to ideology and policy prescriptions. I think someone like James Solomon jumping into the race hurts Bill O'Day more than it hurts Jim McGreevy. Is that fair to say?
Well, there's quite a few things to unpack. So let's rewind for a moment. So first of all, you noted that it's not going to be a two-man race. It's probably going to be 5 or 6 people running would be my guess. And Joyce Waterman, the council president, she actually did declare right before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
And, so she is a declared candidate in this race, and she's already endorsed Andy Kim for U.S. Senate, which is interesting. But, like you said, we'll get to that a little later. So we have 3 officially. As far as Ward E Councilman James Solomon goes, certainly he shocked a lot of people when he won that runoff in 2017. And he won by the widest margin of any candidate in 2021. Both times, of course, he ran as an independent. He showed an ability to raise a ton of money. I mean, over $400,000 for a downtown council race is pretty unheard of, or at least it used to be until this happened. So certainly he'd be formidable if he does decide to run. I'm hearing anywhere between, if he's going to jump in, it could be anywhere from the second quarter of this year to the fourth quarter of this year. So obviously, if that ends up shaking out, pretty fair to say that he's not interested in a 2-year campaign. And frankly, why would any sane person be interested in a 2-year campaign, as we've already discussed? Now, how much does it hurt Bill O'Day and Solomon in the race? I mean, certainly they have some crossover appeal. Obviously, people have called Commissioner O'Day, they've called him the original progressive here in Jersey City. So certainly and also his district, when it got redistricted a couple years ago, you have part of downtown that added on to the already west side portion of the district. So yeah, there's definitely some overlap there, some crossover appeal, if you will. And, that certainly makes the race trickier. But uh, if it was only those three, I think he would have, or four, I think he would have a pretty big issue. However, as you said, there might be other people that decide to jump in. Like I'm hearing fairly regularly that County Commissioner Jerry Walker's talking about it, and we don't know what my councilman, Ward D councilman Yusuf Saleh is going to do. All I know is he's not on a ticket yet. Of course, nobody officially is on a ticket yet, just to be clear. And we have a 9-member council. There's committee members, there's ward leaders. There might even be someone that's maybe a director at another municipality that wants to run. Obviously they'd have to live in Jersey City, but I think a conservative number of candidates is 5, and I think you could get as many as 7 or 8. If you have that many, I don't think they'd all have a full ticket. But at that point, when you have that December runoff and you have that many people vying for that one big seat, I think really a lot of it is more luck than skill at that point, just because it's such a crowded field and it's an open seat. And that's something that really hasn't happened here in a decade. So
What are you hearing about Rich Boggiano? I know a lot of people. I mean, aside from some comments that maybe have gotten him into some hot water, which we'll touch on in a minute. But what are you hearing about Rich Boggiano? Do you think he'll run for another term, or do you think this is pretty much it for Richard?
Well, I mean, I'm hearing there's really been no decision on that front yet, but I guess all I could say there is I'd be surprised if he ran again. Obviously it looks like Peter Horton would like to run. He's someone that works in Jersey City in the law department, and he's also a committee member, has been a ward leader in Ward C. And it looks like Tom Zupa, who of course ran in 2021 and has his own civic association, looks like they're both very interested in running. And I'm sure other candidates are going to emerge as we get closer. But I guess, again, I don't have anything official to tell you, but I would just be really surprised because he's already now in his 3rd term. Obviously, he's the most senior member of the council. I mean, by the time the next race comes around, he's going to be around 80 years old. I just don't know how that would work logistically. And, that board also through redistricting, rewarding, is a little different than it was when he started on the council. So I feel like probably not, but haven't heard anything definitively.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything either, and I think it'll be interesting to see what Richard decides. Like, listen, he's been a great public servant, no question. I think he's a guy who's given his time and then some to public service, and we'll see. And if he chooses not to your point, I mean, someone like Tom Zupa, I mean, I've had an eye on him for years now. I've interviewed him in the past, and he's a guy that is very engaged in the community, certainly someone that's very well respected. And I would argue whoever gets him on a ticket, I think, has a great advantage in pulling a lot of votes. I mean, Tom has been that public servant as well, someone who's worked, again, at the county level, certainly someone who is very engaged with his own civic association. So definitely, I think Zupa is a guy to watch out for that will definitely help strengthen a ticket for sure. Let me ask you this, because it's one of those things that, I like Jim McGreevey personally. Not sure if you had a chance to catch my interview with him a few weeks back. I know that he thus far has the support of the Hudson County Democratic Organization, which, again, there's a lot of argument and debate about the line, John, and, whether or not it's viewed favorably or unfavorably. And I know it's somewhere in the courts right now about the future of the line. But were you surprised as much as I was that the HCDO came out so early for Jim McGreevey?
Not really, because as you know, the person that former Governor McGreevey mentioned at his kickoff and the person that had been hyping up long before he announced was State Senator Union City Mayor Brian Stack. And certainly he is an influential member of the party at this point. And the fact that, then all of a sudden you had all these mayors, to your notion that you just made, falling in line, if you will, I'm surprised that it happened as quickly as it did, but I'm not surprised that it happened. So that's the short answer. The other thing is, don't forget that in Jersey City and the majority of the Hudson County municipalities, these are nonpartisan races. So while he will have the backing of the majority, if not the entire HCDO, at the end of the day, this isn't a Democratic or Republican race. So I don't know how much of a factor that will have on the voters. I mean, don't forget in 2013, the HCDO was with Jeremiah Healy, and we know how that race ended. And that's not the first time the HCDO lost to Jersey City in the past 15, 20 years. So, or 10 to 20 years probably would be a better time frame. So certainly it helps, and it's certainly something that a lot of candidates would like to have. But if you're somebody like Bill O'Day or James Solomon, I actually don't think that would help you at all. So it remains to be seen what sort of impact that will actually have in the long term. But this early in the game, it certainly can't hurt.
No, absolutely. And folks, if you just joined us right now, it's 6:14 here on the East Coast. My guest right now on Real Talk with Fernando Uribe live here on Jersey First TV. He is the distinguished founder and publisher of the Hudson County View. John Heinis joins us here as we're live on Real Talk. John, I look at Jersey City, and to your point, obviously, getting the line helps greatly to some extent. And we've had some instances in the last, let's say, 10, 15 years, right? We've had an incident in West New York where a mayoral candidate was able to win against the machine, as they said, Felix Roque, and certainly in 2013, we saw Steve Phillip do that. And, the mayor has been notoriously, I think, quiet thus far. Why would he show his hand, as they say, this early in the race? While the HCDO has publicly, again, endorsed Jim McGreevey, Steve Phillip, obviously has his own race to deal with, and we'll talk about that in a moment for governor. But Steve's been very quiet right now during this entire saga. I don't anticipate Stephen Phillip sort of showing any favoritism or any support for anybody right now. What are you hearing about Steve, and what's, where he's leaning towards, or does he even need to?
Well, right now, my understanding is that he's just going to stay out of it, and that's probably going to be the case now through the primary next June 2025, that is. The reason being, I mean, look, obviously, I know him and Jim McGreevey are not the best of friends, and that is unlikely to change between now and then. And I think really he's doing it out of respect to Senator Stack. I think he's, taking a hands-off approach and just a wait and see. Now, also, his election aside, the gubernatorial race aside, keep in mind that we still only have 3 declared candidates. So, I think regardless of what mayor of what municipality, it wouldn't do you much sense. It wouldn't really do you any favors to come out this early for a candidate when you don't even know what the field is going to be. So between those couple things, I'm not really surprised. I think you're not going to really see him come out for a candidate at all unless he loses the primary. But, there's so many moving parts between now and then. Who knows where it's going to go? I mean, there's just it's basically like trying to predict the Super Bowl in the preseason, I guess would be the best analogy I could give. Like, it's just a lot of time on the game clock, and it's really hard to know what that end game is going to be.
No, and listen, we'll have a lot of time to talk about it between now and November of 2025 for sure here on this program. Let's stay in Jersey City. It's one of the municipalities in the 8th congressional district, and nearby Mayor Ravi Bala, I know a big fan of mine, as I'm a big fan of his, did declare to attempt a primary the incumbent U.S. Representative Rob Menendez. And listen, shout out to David Wallstein. I know, as well as you, I know you've been reporting on Ravi Bala's fundraising. I know Rob is trying to do a good job as well. I'm really surprised, though, John, because it seems like whether it's Ravi Bala or other people, maybe just, pouncing on Rob seems to be the sport of the day now. Obviously, his father is under intense scrutiny and obviously under the spotlight. What are you hearing about Ravi Bala's chances? Again, the HCDO did endorse Rob Menendez right now, as the primary is, 6 months, a little under 6 months away. But Ravi Bala seems to be raising a lot of money. Where it's coming from, I don't know. But does Robbie really have a realistic chance of unseating Rob this June during the primary?
Well, again, this is another one where it's a little early, but let's unpack what we have so far. So obviously he declared. I think the first time we heard was actually just a couple days after the Senator Bob Menendez, who of course is Rob's father, the congressman's father. He put that, I guess you could say, dangled the carrot and said through a spokesman, I'm seriously considering it. And at that point, people were starting to hear that he was fundraising, he was sending emails, making calls. And it seemed pretty obvious that he was going to run. So inevitably, he ended up announcing last month, about a week after their runoff election for the first ward. Now, with that said, between September and the end of the year, they're reporting through the NJ Globe that Mayor Bala raised about $1 million, which is obviously no small feat. I mean, certainly that needs to be taken seriously. I think anybody in New Jersey running for Congress in the June 4th, 2024 primary would be absolutely astonished and excited to be raising that kind of money, with the exception of U.S. Rep. Josh Gottheimer, who probably is one of the most prolific fundraisers in the country. With that said, that's a very strong showing from a candidate that hasn't run on the federal level before. But, money isn't everything in politics. Certainly we saw, U.S. Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, of course, better known as AOC. We saw her win despite getting outspent by the incumbent quite a bit a few years ago. I believe that was 2018. So that's just one of many examples where money's not everything. The other thing, we don't know where Congressman Menendez is in terms of fundraising. As you alluded to, the FEC reports aren't out yet. So all we really have is, big fundraising and cash on hand numbers. So let's see what the gap is there, number one. And number two, I think a big part of this race that's going to make it interesting and is going to basically be the X factor is what's going on with Senator Bob Menendez. So is he going to take a plea deal? Is he really going to trial? Will the trial get delayed? Will he decide to run as a Democrat? Will he run as an independent? Will he not run at all? These are all questions that we certainly couldn't know the answer to as of yet. But, whatever he decides to do for his reelection or not, or whatever he decides to do with this federal trial, I think is going to color this congressional race significantly. And if you're in a situation here where he is on the ballot, I think Congressman Menendez could be in trouble, or a situation either or where he is having that trial that's going right in the heart of the election season. That would certainly make things a lot more challenging than I think the congressman would like.
John, listen, you're a straight up news guy. You're on the street. You get the scoops. You're breaking news. I'm the opinion guy. Let me just unpackage this real quick here, because, I look at this race, in the 8th congressional district, and again, I'm trying to be objective here. I know people will say, well, Bala and Uribe don't really like each other, which is true. But what is Robbie going to run on? I mean, personally, for me, it's what are you going to run on, dude? Hoboken's still flooding. You'd rather, break, the seal in a new park instead of addressing things like that. I mean, okay, I get it. You've had control of the city council before. You lost it recently during a runoff. I mean, what's Robbie going to run on? I mean, Hoboken's becoming way too expensive to live in. It's pricing out lifelong residents. There's still development going on. Parking's still a problem. We got rats. We have a rat infestation, not just the ones working at City Hall, but we're talking about physical rats in the streets. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, Robbie can raise money, but what's he going to run on? What's he going to challenge Rob on? In the sense of, Rob and I were friends. I like Rob personally. I think he's been a hard worker during his freshman year in the House of Representatives. Maybe some positions he takes I don't really agree with, but he knows that. We have that respect for each other. But I just look at this race and say, other than you just want to pound on his dad, what's Robbie Bala going to run on? Because I look at Hoboken and I'm like, wait a minute, what do you have to brag about? And that's how I look at this race, John.
Yeah. So first of all, I guess the concrete answer is I don't know, and we don't know, because at this point there hasn't been much. I mean, as you noted, the only real thing that anybody's talked about in this race so far is Bob Menendez. So, obviously that's to be expected, but clearly he's not the opponent. The matchup isn't Robbie Bala and Senator Menendez. It's Robbie Bala and Congressman Menendez, Rob Menendez. So what is he going to run on? Well, I mean, I think he gave us a little taste last week. I don't know if you saw this tweet. I'm actually going to pull it up while I'm talking to you.
Sure.
Because he gave basically something talking about resiliency and what he would like to see happening in DC. Now, what he said was, just give me a second here. So he said, New Jersey, this is a direct quote of what he said in the caption for the video on Twitter. New Jerseyans agree Congress isn't doing enough to tackle the biggest challenges facing our communities. As mayor of Hoboken, squaring our shoulders to the threat of climate change was a day one priority. We did this by making our city's infrastructure more resilient to flooding and rising sea levels. I'm proud to have made these investments as mayor. I'm looking forward to continuing that fight in Congress. So he's going to talk about climate change. He's going to talk about Vision Zero, which is, of course, the traffic safety initiative that began in Jersey City and has now expanded to many other municipalities in the state. I'm sure he's going to at some point talk about the COVID response in Hoboken. Obviously, that got national attention. And, that's the only things I could really think of for the moment. But to give you a little preview, a little taste, I guess, of what this race is going to be like, we actually saw and heard a response from Rep Menendez, and he was. Well, I'll just read it and let it speak for itself. He had a green check that said Resilient City Park received $10 million in federal funding. Another green check marker, built by design, is a $230 million federally funded project made possible by Mayor Zimmer's hard work. Another green check marker, office has secured EJ grants for nonprofits, grants for clean tech, and is engaging with the Army Corps of Engineers to ensure our region is a long-term resilient infrastructure solution. And then it's a red X that says, how about you focus on actually finishing all of the projects at Hoboken you've cut ribbons for but haven't completed. So, I think that gives you the idea of the tone. Clearly, these guys don't like each other very much. And I expect this to be a bit of a brawl, probably one of the nastier races that we've seen in recent memory. And, I think that's where it stands. And I don't really see that changing anytime soon, if at all.
I'm with you. And I think, listen, I'm not going to be, not sort of showing my cards here, but yeah, I'm rooting for Rob. I mean, Rob has a lot of ammunition to hit Robbie with. Again, Robbie Bala, and his council members, the Lollipop Guild, as I like to affectionately call them. I mean, they love ribbon cuttings. They love painting, crosswalks during Pride Month. They love all this stuff, all this social justice, woke nonsense that they subscribe to. But again, how is Hoboken better under their watch? It'll be interesting because, I think Rob has a really good advantage here with the messaging. And once Robbie loses, I think in June during the primary, I think it makes him vulnerable for 2025 should he decide to run for another term in Hoboken. And obviously, we're hearing names like Councilman Russo and others that maybe want to challenge Robbie Bala. At some point, I'm hoping somebody pulls the trigger here in Hoboken and will challenge Robbie Bala because sooner or later, someone has to hold Robbie accountable. And I think that Rob will probably do that in the messaging, to your point. I think it's going to get nasty. I think it might be, again, as fellow pro wrestling fans, I think it might be very WWE-ish. And I think we'll like the shoot interviews, I'm sure, with all the candidates. But I think Rob has a good advantage here, not just because he's the incumbent, because, listen, again, you look at Rob's record. Rob's in D.C. He's been advocating for a lot of causes. Again, we don't always agree on some policies and some positions. That's fine. But I don't think Robbie's going to hit back with saying, well, Rob's just been slacking and sitting there in his office in D.C. doing nothing. Rob's been proactive in his defense. I don't want to sound like I'm just sort of campaigning for Rob, but, Rob has rolled up his sleeves and gotten to work. And I think that that's something that, other than pounding on his dad, I don't know what Robbie's going to hit him on. They're both about climate change, and they're both about, trying to remedy that situation and that issue. But other than that, I don't know what Robbie's going to hit him with. I just think Rob has much more ammunition to hit Bala with than Bala does Rob Menendez, John. Or am I looking at this wrong?
Well, remains to be seen, of course. But yeah, look, as far as his track record in D.C., obviously he's talked about the money he's brought back to the district. Yeah. Obviously, he's talked about how many constituent affairs cases he's closed. And, he's talked, his office, I know, prides themselves on being extremely responsive to everyone that calls and emails. And, I think most people could objectively say that he had a pretty productive first year in office. But, so as far as what attack points are, I couldn't say, but I would bet you that they've both spent a lot of money on opposition research already. So I imagine that there's going to be a lot of fur flying, if you will. And I imagine it's really, again, just going to be a bare knuckle boxing match. And they're just going to hit each other with everything, including the kitchen sink and the toilet. I think they're really going to go after each other hard. Now, to your question about what, I'm not really sure, but I think we're going to find out pretty soon.
Definitely. Another endorsement of the HDO, and let's move on to some state issues here, was of Tammy Murphy, the wife of the governor. And, John, again, and, I'm the opinion guy, so I don't expect you to sort of follow through with this, but, I seem to recall reading in my history books as a child and then going into undergrad and grad school that didn't we fight a war 248 years ago to sort of free ourselves of a monarchy and King George in England? And now 248 years later, it seems like New Jersey is living under its own monarchy. The governor, the emperor, as I like to affectionately call Phil Murphy, is basically trying to get his wife elected and trying to, I would argue, strong arm county committees, every Democrat possible to make sure that they're endorsing Tammy Murphy. And again, it boggles my mind how there isn't more outrage. People want to talk about nepotism and who they want to levy it on. all right, whatever. People are entitled to their opinions, but why there isn't more outrage about what Phil Murphy's doing with his wife, Tammy Murphy, and all these sort of county Democratic committees just falling in line. Again, dude, like, didn't we get rid of the monarchy? And now it seems like we're living under one. I'll be honest with you, dude. It's sickening to me. I just don't know if, regular everyday Democrats are going to get behind Tammy Murphy.
Yeah, well, I guess let's start here. I mean, I think there has certainly been outrage. I mean, you saw, just let's talk about the press for a moment. Like, NJ Spotlight News, they've had Julie Rajinski on, they've had Katie Brennan on, and certainly they did not have very nice things to say about the First Lady. Yeah. And also, the Star Ledger had an editorial that was pretty critical of some of the claims she made about reproductive health. And we just saw over the weekend, I don't know if you caught it, there was an article in the New York Times about the college Democrats of New Jersey endorsing Andy Kim, and apparently there were some pretty serious allegations of the Murphy campaign making some threats to try to prevent this from happening. So certainly people are talking about it. Of course, that's in the press. But as far as the general public, anytime I go on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, I mean, anytime I look, people are upset about this, not across the board, but there are people that are vocal. Of course, some more than others. And it looks like Andy Kim really does have a lot of support. He's a congressman that has gotten national attention in light of January 6th, 2020. Of course, we all know that viral photo of him cleaning up at the Capitol after the fact. But I think this is a real race. And I don't think anyone's going to, as it stands today, which could change tomorrow, I don't think anyone's going to run away with it. I think you're looking at a 4 or 5 point race at this moment. And the other thing that makes me feel that way is because you have other people that are running. You have Patricia Campos Medina, and you have Larry Ham, two activists that many identify in the progressive circles. So certainly they would have to do a lot of creative things to try to stay competitive in this thing, because Andy Kim and Tammy Murphy have already raised millions of dollars. And again, we still don't know what Senator Menendez is going to do. So I think this is going to be a photo finish. I really don't think anyone's going to win in a landslide here.
John, I talked about it with David Wallerstein, the editor of the New Jersey Globe, a few weeks ago to start the year, about Senator Menendez. And listen, I'm a guy that is all about the presumption of innocence. Due process is what separates our system from others around the planet, as they say. And I understand it looks incriminating. I get it. Just like others, I think everyone's entitled to due process, whether it's a former president, whether it's a sitting U.S. senator. I'm all about due process. Let's let the process play itself out. We'll see. To your point, I know that Senator Menendez has not made any formal announcement of what he's looking to do. He is the incumbent. Do you see a scenario maybe where, again, the senator, it seems like his case will not be postponed, so it starts in May, a month out of the primary season, obviously, and when the primary day comes. Do you see any scenario maybe where the senator looks at it and says, well, it appears that all these county committees, all these machines, and the state Democratic Committee is firmly behind Tammy Murphy. There are certain organizations behind Andy Kim. Hey, they might just fight it out for the Democratic primary. I have zero faith that the NJGOP will nominate anybody to run. So do you think maybe the senator looks at this and says, maybe there's a chance to run as an independent, and if there's 3 candidates, maybe I can sneak back in here because the turnout might not be great. I mean, listen, it's a presidential election year. We know the president's on the ballot. Most likely his opponent will be the 45th president. We'll see what that does in terms of the other candidates down the line, as they say, on the ballot. But do you see any scenario where maybe Senator Menendez does run as an independent and maybe he could actually win that?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, obviously, like Senator Menendez has showed us throughout this whole process that he's not really fazed by the public opinion here, even though he's really been taking a beating. But I mean, look, even if he goes to trial in May and gets found not guilty on all counts, I don't see any scenario how you could win. I mean, this is a state where they've gone blue, I don't know how many times in a row. For these congressional Senate races, for the most part. I mean, a couple exceptions here and there. But, like Jeff Van Drew, for example, obviously has won quite a few times, actually both as Democrat and a Republican. But anyway, to this point, I mean, I don't think there's any hope whatsoever the Republican nominee, whether it's Nikki Haley, Donald Trump, or someone else, I don't think they have any real shot of winning New Jersey. So whether it's Joe Biden or anyone else, you would have to assume it's him as of today for the Democratic side. I just don't see any possible way that the Democratic nominee can lose this one.
Oh, no, I'm with you. Again, I don't see it as a vulnerable seat. I'm sure, Democrats feel confident that they'll retain it and obviously try to keep some sort of majority. Hopefully not. Hopefully they'll lose the majority later this November, at least for me. That's how I'm looking at this. But, back to your point about Senator Menendez, I mean, this doesn't exactly look like it's a trial that's going to be ending right before primary day. This might be a trial that drags throughout the summer months. I mean, again, with the millions of pages of discovery that the Menendez legal team has to sift through right now, and probably is, I don't see this being a speedy trial whatsoever. So, again, it seems like the senator might just be like, all right, well, there's a primary going on, whether it's Tammy Murphy, obviously going on with Andy Kim. And let me just say this about the other two declared candidates, which is what kind of drives me crazy, John, about sort of the liberal establishment media in New Jersey. Larry Hamm, again, nice guy, but I mean, he's becoming like the Hirsch Singh of the Democrat Party in New Jersey. He just seems to be running for everything and anything. And again, don't get me started on Patty Campos Medina. I mean, this is a woman with no experience in elected office, a woman who is a staunch left-winger who, again, I mean, subscribes to policies that not one policy has ever made New Jersey better. And it just seems like people like Larry Hamm, Medina, and others who are so far left that subscribe to some policies that are just mind-boggling to me. Like, nothing you believe in has made New Jersey better. New Jersey still remains to be the highest property taxes in the country. It continues to have mass migration out of here. It's becoming, well, it is unaffordable. It's continuing to become unaffordable. So it's like, I look at these progressive candidates, John, that probably, who knows, if they raise a nickel, that's a miracle. But like, none of those policies have made New Jersey better. So I don't understand what people like Medina, Hamm are going to run on, or even, Andy Kim or Tammy Murphy, where Democrats have had to control the legislature for 20 years plus here. And again, highest property taxes in the country. The gas tax isn't going away. People are moving out of the state. So are businesses. It's mind-boggling to me how more New Jerseyans aren't sort of holding them accountable or saying, hey, what are you going to do to make New Jersey more affordable? Because it's their policies that are suffocating us, John. But that's me. Again, I'm the opinion guy.
Well, look, I mean, I don't really think whoever is elected to the U.S. Senate, Democratic, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, whatever, I don't really think that's going to change the cost of rent. I don't really think that's going to change gasoline prices. I think this is more state stuff. I mean, obviously, gasoline prices has a federal implication to it. But, the left-wing policies you mentioned, I guess they're going to have to go all the way to the left if they're going to have a campaign that has any sort of steam, any sort of credibility, because they have to stand out from the other candidates. And as we've already discussed, they're not going to be able to raise, $5-10 million, whatever those final numbers look like for Tammy Murphy and Andy Kim. So I think it's really now I get your point. Like, why bother running if they don't see a path to victory? Perhaps behind closed doors, they've come up with some sort of, game plan that makes this feasible. I certainly don't know what that could look like. But, I mean, look, I point blank. I mean, I think the nominee's either Tammy Murphy or Andy Kim. I don't really think it matters who else jumps in. I think it's pretty obvious that one of those two will be the Democratic nominee.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, obviously, we'll see what unfolds as primary day is less than 5 months away. But another interesting issue about primary day, though, John, obviously, we talked about the 8th congressional district. I think another interesting race in New Jersey, I believe, is CD7, right? I believe, obviously, Tom Kean, the incumbent, might be facing a serious challenge for that seat from the Democrats. We know Sue Altman, the former executive director of the New Jersey Working Families Party, has raised a lot of money. I like Sue personally. I don't like a lot of her positions, and I don't like the people she sort of, shares company with or who support her. But she's a woman, I think, that is making a lot of noise. I think Tom Kean is not the most inspiring candidate. And what concerns me about that House seat is that, again, back in 2022, after redistricting, it was kind of tailor-made for Tom Kean to win, and he barely sort of squeaked it out over Tom Malinowski. 2 years later, someone like a Sue Altman, it depends if she wins the primary, we don't know. She has a couple of other candidates, I think, declared too in that race. But I look at someone like Tom Kean and someone like Sue Altman, potentially, that's a showdown. It's almost like well, super crazy left progressive values, and maybe a guy who's just not an establishment guy in DC, but a guy who's had maybe not the most inspiring freshman year in the House. How do you see that race so far, John?
Well, yeah, if I'm not mistaken, you've probably been following this one just a little bit closer than I have, but I think Sue's already raised over $1 million.
Yeah.
And, Tom Keene, I'm sure has millions. I haven't looked at his fundraising. Again, the FEC reports aren't out yet. But yeah, I mean, considering that it's supposed to be a very red district, you wouldn't expect her to be doing as well as she is at this moment. Now, I don't know what kind of response she's getting at the doors or not, but it looks like this is going to be competitive, and it looks like she's the front runner to win the Democratic nomination for this moment. But again, we're still pretty early, first quarter at the most. I mean that in terms of like a football game. So, I mean, I think this is a race where the incumbent definitely is going to have to work hard. I mean, to stick with the football analogies, I mean, last time we kind of saw where basically his campaign just kind of played hide the football, right? Like they didn't really do much press. They didn't, I don't really know what their ground game looked like, but they seemed to just appeal to, very staunch, longtime conservative voters. Mostly, I guess that was through like email blasts and I guess through phone banking and stuff. Obviously, it wasn't stuff that you typically saw in the public domain. And it ended up working just because the district, again, became so much more conservative than it was previously when those two matched up in the 2 years prior in 2020. So now here, obviously Sue Altman's a much different candidate than Tom Malinowski, and she's the challenger. Of course, Tom Kane's the incumbent. But I mean, look, I think if that does end up being the matchup, I think it's a real race, and I think pretty much you're going to see both of those candidates scrapping for every single vote. And I'm curious to see what that would look like.
No, it certainly will. Speaking of vote, John, before I let you go, folks, at 6:42 here on the East Coast, we're about to wrap up shortly with the founder and publisher of the Hudson County View. Again, check it out at hudsoncountyview.com. He is John R. Heinis, our guest tonight here on Real Talk. John, last week, the city of Newark, and I'll be talking about this more, folks, and during Final Thoughts, you definitely want to tune in for that coming up after John. For a city where literacy rates for kids are kind of in the toilet and, crime is still running rampant in Newark, I have to laugh at the priorities of the Newark City Council and, thinking that it's a good idea for 16-year-olds to vote in school board races. I look at this, John, it doesn't cease to amaze me what the left in New Jersey likes to prioritize, or at least in the city of Newark. Again, just the aforementioned, there are more important things in Newark to worry about than 16-year-olds voting in school board races, and to say nothing of the fact that, hey, I mean, this is, again, I'm the opinion guy, but this is what the left wants. The left wants to, make voting, supposedly as accessible as possible to everybody. And you look at a school board race, and it just seems like at some point there'll be a push to, vote for council races, maybe a push to amend the voting age. And I hate to break it to you, to kids who are 16 who don't pay taxes, their parents do. Maybe some don't in Newark. Okay. We know property taxes pay for school budgets and everything. It boggles my mind how there isn't more outrage about this. And I get it. There's reporting by the sort of the establishment media on this, but there should be more outrage about this, John. And I'm looking at this and I'm just like, really? Is this what's the most pressing thing in Newark?
Right. So, look, we know Governor Phil Murphy came out during his State of the State and he endorsed this policy, and obviously he signed the bill. Or he said he'd like to get the bill on his desk so he could sign it, to be more accurate. And then, I think within 24 hours, the vote you just mentioned in Newark happened, and yes, it passed. So now 16-year-olds can vote in the next Newark school board race. Now, where does it go from here? Well, I guess first of all, like I think a lot of other cities will probably adopt it, like a Patterson, like a Jersey City or an Elizabeth. And I'm just speculating. I mean, I'm not presenting that as stone cold fact. To your point about higher priorities and such, well, I don't really know why this is being viewed the way that it is, because look, when you talk to people that are 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, like if you probably approached 20 people, 30 people, whatever, on Bergen Line Avenue, on Grove Street, Palisade Ave, whatever, one of the main thoroughfares in the county, I bet you less than 1% of them could tell you the full school board of any given municipality that they live in. So I do understand the governor's point that, yes, it's good to get people into the habit of voting. Voter turnout is always pretty crappy in this state, at least in the past decade or two. We're seeing people win specifically school board seats with, I think I've seen as low as 6% turnout, 8% turnout, 10% turnout, 12% turnout. People don't vote in these school board races as a whole. So to think that allowing 16 and 17-year-olds to vote on these elections might bolster turnout and might get people more engaged, it might be good on an individual level, but as a broader policy level, I don't really know what's accomplished. Again, your average adult that's been in the workforce for a couple decades is not voting in the school board. So I don't know why someone that's a sophomore or junior or possibly a senior in high school would care. I mean, I don't see too many people posting on Instagram, Twitter, anywhere else saying how excited they are about this opportunity. I don't think it's a bad thing, but I'm not really sure what this is supposed to accomplish in the long term.
Fair point, John. John, we're very different journalists, and I know that people will call you a journalist. Some people may not call me one, but that's fine. They're entitled to their opinion. But certainly what we do is very different. And I know I've known you for over 10 years, and you've always been a hardworking guy. You roll up your sleeves, cut your teeth in the business at a young age, and certainly, branching out like you did many years ago with Hudson County View. Sort of for our audience at home, I mean, like, how pressure packed is this sort of career for you? Because, what I'm doing is, I'm talking about the news, I'm opining. I don't sort of feel necessarily the pressure to have to break news every day or every other hour or publish with regularity. What are some of, for anyone that's looking to do what you're doing, let's say publishing on a regular basis, on a daily basis, having sources, breaking news, writing columns, how overwhelming has it been from when you started the Hudson County View to the present? What have been some of the highs and lows for you, man?
Sure. So, as you know, and perhaps not everyone watching or who will watch knows, I mean, I own the outlet, and it's been just shy of a decade. By the time we get to this primary, it'll be 10 years. So, with that said, the first 2 to 3 years, most small businesses go under. I don't remember where that statistic came from, but I heard it quite a few times when I just started doing this. And, it's definitely hard work. I mean, you've been to a Jersey City Council meeting and you know how excruciating they could be. I mean, that's just one of many examples, but their council meetings, their Board of Ed meetings, they could go 5-6 hours, depending on what's on the agenda, obviously. But at Hoboken Council, almost always goes past 11 o'clock, it feels like. Just a couple examples. So, like, that stuff is time consuming. And then you have to look at the video, you cut the video, you edit the video, you put the logo on, you add the captions, you check the audio. And then you have to upload the video to YouTube. You get a preview for Twitter, for Instagram, maybe Facebook. And then you actually have to write it up. And, it's definitely can be painstaking at times. But I guess what I would say for anyone that wants to get into journalism, especially local journalism covering local government and local politics, I would say you really have to love it. I mean, if it's just something you're doing for a paycheck, this is never going to make you rich. Yeah. So if this is not a passion for you, I would probably recommend something else, because it is quite time consuming. And if you just don't have that labor of love, it's not going to be fun. And if it's not fun and you're not making a lot of money, why would you do it? So,
John, well said. John, why is there so much sort of, not scrutiny, but again, sort of getting back to, I think, the evolution of journalism? I mean, listen, we've grown up here. I look at guys like Al Sullivan, who I call like the dean of Hudson County journalism, and others that have, cut their teeth in the business. They wrote, for print media. We know that print media is slowly dying. We know digital media, social media has taken over journalism. I would argue, as someone who started podcasting back in 2017, I think it's just as legit as anybody else. And there still seems to be this sort of, scarlet letter or vilification of podcasters like myself who will call themselves broadcast journalists, and it's sort of looked upon with some scorn. I just think it's unnecessary. And again, we're seeing advances in technology. We're living on our smartphones. Podcasting isn't going anywhere. Opinion journalism isn't going anywhere, despite what, let's say, the establishment media would have you believe otherwise. Why is there still, again, such vitriol for people doing, let's say, what I'm doing, or others that are podcasting, that are blogging, even, again, sort of other avenues where it's not the traditional forms of journalism that we grew up with.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess a few things on this point. So, look, obviously we have a healthy mutual respect for each other. And fortunately, it's always been that way. For the, maybe one or two exceptions over the years, but certainly in recent memory, we've been pretty good. And that's a thing that kind of annoys me about your point, because like a lot of outlets, whether it's a newspaper versus like a website or a podcaster versus like somebody who does exclusively like Instagram reports, somebody maybe like a HUD post, that does have a website too, but certainly their bread and butter is Instagram. My point being is a lot of outlets and a lot of reporters look at each other like enemies, and I think that's the wrong approach. I think we should be lifting each other up. I think we should be supporting each other when we can, and having just a healthy, hearty dialogue when we see each other in person, as opposed to this scorn, like, oh, this guy's or this girl is, that's my competition, so I hate her. Like, I don't think that's just the wrong way to look at it. And I think that's part of the problem. As far as the new media versus the old media, I'm not really too sure what to say about that. I mean, obviously, ever since I started in the business, people have been telling me the Star Ledger is going to go under. Clearly, it hasn't happened yet. Certainly we have seen some larger, more established outlets die, like the Hudson Reporter, unfortunately, went under about, I guess, maybe a year and a half ago now. So certainly it can happen. But yeah, I mean, overall, me personally, I would like to see, a little more collaboration. Something as simple as me personally, whenever I see something reported, whether it's by someone that I particularly like or dislike, I always put the link. I always give credit, assuming, we're not just copy and pasting a press release, right? Like assuming there's some authentic, original reporting going on. And I feel like even something as simple as that is lost. A lot of people don't even like to credit other people anymore, which I think really sucks.
I'm with you. And I think that it just seems to be like, I understand it can be tribal, and I understand that there's competition and everything, but, I don't look at, for example, again, what you're doing, man, you're breaking news daily, if not hourly. What other people are doing on other news sites, I mean, that's their business, but it just seems like, listen, I'm not competing with anybody. Not because I'm better than anybody else. I'm doing my thing. It work. What I do works. It clearly, the traffic tells you that. Some people might say otherwise, but it works. What you're doing works. I think what other people do, obviously works as well. I just think there just seems to be this sort of unnecessary tribalism, because at the end of the day, like, yeah, we should all eat. Again, no one should be without. But I think at the end of the day, it just becomes unnecessarily competitive. I don't know if it's testosterone. I don't know if it's just tribalism. It just seems like something that's unnecessary. But, you got guys in a room here. You got guys in a business where we all have egos. I know I have one. I don't think you have one, John. I think you're less of an ego-driven person than I'd say I am, because you're also doing like straight up news. You're publishing, you're breaking news, you're writing columns. You're not an opinion guy, right? I mean, you've been doing this for over 10 years. Someone like me, I mean, I'm very opinion driven. That's my brand of journalism. I just think at the end of the day, it's like it becomes unnecessarily competitive where, again, John, like what you're doing doesn't affect me. I don't think what I do affects you, but we should all be able to flourish. And I just think it's becoming tragic, bro.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we're pretty much on the same page on that point. I mean, look, it is what it is, and certainly neither you or I could change it. But yeah, I mean, that kind of climate, that kind of mindset, it does upset me. I mean, I wish it was different. It's not going to change at this point, but that's the only thing I'll add on that point.
Yeah, definitely. Folks, he is John Heinis, the founder and publisher of the Hudson County View. Again, approaching its 10-year anniversary, right, dude? Like, when's the exact date?
June.
June. All right. Well, folks, 10 years on the air. Obviously, you can also catch him on the Hudson Media Group as Hudson County View Live airs with Hudson Media Group. Again, shout out to our good friend Patrick O'Malia there with Hudson Media Group. I do a show with them as well, and looking forward to contributing in the coming weeks. Man, a lot to talk about in Hudson County and in New Jersey. And of course, nobody does it better at a local level than John R. Heinis. Once again, folks, the founder and editor, publisher as well of the Hudson County View. Johnny, love you, man. Great rapport, and keep up the great work. And we appreciate you coming on here on Jersey First TV. I appreciate your faith in the show and your faith in me, man. God bless you, bro. We'll talk to you again soon here on Jersey First TV.
Thanks for having me. Talk to you soon.
Take care, man. Folks, good stuff there with Johnny Heinis there. Again, it's approaching 10 years. It's unbelievable, right? As we know that, we used to work together at Hudson County TV some many moons ago, as they say. John has branched off into really great journalism with what he's doing with Hudson County View, obviously breaking stories, exclusive interviews, great stuff that he's doing. And fortunately, I was able to branch out as well, doing stuff that I've done, obviously, here on Jersey First TV, and wouldn't have it any other way. So, again, folks, check out his great stuff. You can check out Hudson County View at hudsoncountyview.com. Don't forget to like them on Facebook. Of course, follow them on Instagram and Twitter. Great stuff, as always, from John Heinis, again, fellow Rutgers alumnus, and certainly a member of the Pinnacle in Hudson County. Folks, before we call it a night, you know what time it is. It's time for final thoughts. And ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you, and to John's point that he mentioned just a few minutes ago, yes, unfortunately, journalism in the Garden State has become unnecessarily tribal. I get it. We're all out to get the most clicks, the most views. I understand all that. But what bothers me, and again, and this is where I look at someone like John and I applaud him, because what he's doing is covering stories, breaking news, having wonderful interviews. Again, if you haven't seen him on the Hudson County View, check him out there on his site, but also with what he does with the Hudson County View Live via the Hudson Media Group. Again, a shout out once again to Patrick O'Melia, CEO there of the Hudson Media Group. Again, I'm proud to be a part of the Hudson Media Group. I do my show, Talking Politics, with Fernando Uribe there. You'll see my synopsis of local stories and statewide stories as well. So I'm proud to be a part of that. But I think, folks, what bothers me more is when it comes to the establishment media in New Jersey, and the reason I'm so harsh on them is because what I'm hoping is that they actually do their jobs. Because when you look at their social media posts, it's funny what they want to feign outrage about. And let me just give you some perspective here, because, again, ladies and gentlemen, I talk about it all the time. Okay. And you know what I think of the aforementioned. You know what my thoughts are and my opinions, how I feel about people like Matt Friedman, Charles Stile, Terrence McDonald, Jay Lassiter, Alan Steinberg, Max Pizarro, Tom Moran. Again, folks, David Cruz. These are guys that, it makes me laugh about what bothers them or what they want to be outraged about or what sort of they want to, get behind when it comes to issues and causes in New Jersey. Okay. And let me tell you a story about something that caught my eye last week. And again, shout out to NJ Spotlight News. Okay. For talking about this story. Okay. And I certainly, listen, who doesn't like to look at Brianna Vanozzi, okay, on their TV screens? I mean, this is a hot looking woman there on TV. Okay. So I'll give her a due. She's great to look at, and she's a good journalist, certainly a great anchor. I mean, obviously, NJ Spotlight News is smart for putting her on your screens, obviously, when other employees may not be as visibly appealing. But regardless of that, folks, okay, the big news coming out of New Jersey's largest city last week was the city council in Newark passing an ordinance, resolution, as they say, to allow 16-year-olds to vote in school board elections. Okay, and let me just give you some context here about what the story is. All right. And they're, again, according to NJ Spotlight News, they're enfranchising younger voters for school board elections, right? So 16 and 17-year-olds collectively will soon be able to vote in school board elections in Newark, give them more say over what happens in their school district, right? So the Newark City Council voted unanimously to approve the ordinance last week, enfranchising more than 7,000 new voters, 90% of them Black and brown, being that Newark is the largest city in the country, to take such a step. Okay? Now, the move is part of a recent push to expand voting rights to young people in New Jersey. And of course, Governor Phil Murphy, the Emperor, has expressed support for allowing 16 and 17-year-olds to vote in school board elections across the state during his State of the State address last week in Trenton. Now, our Newark students, advocates, and council members said that they hope that the state's largest city is the first of many to let more students vote in local elections, right? More on that later, because we know there's an agenda there. Quote, according to Mayor Ross Baraka, this is a good opportunity for young people to begin to get engaged politically, to be a real voting bloc in an election that affects them directly. Now, these voters are expected to cast their first ballots in Newark's April school board election. As Council President LaMonica McIver said, the groups involved in the effort to lower the voting age plan to work with Newark Public Schools on voter education efforts, including workshops for students and for parents. Certainly a lesson in civics, folks, I think is what is on the mind of everybody. Now, supporters and opponents of the move called for better civics education for Newark students. That's true. We do need more civics education in our public schools. For example, Science Park High School juniors Brianna Campbell and Nathaniel Ustabeng say that they have not learned much about civics in school. They testified in support of lowering the voting age to make sure that all of their classmates have a voice in matters that directly affect them. Campbell says she is eager to have a say on curriculum, while Ustabeng named school violence as a top issue. Now, the Newark school board races have had low participation in recent years, with just 3% of registered voters turning out as recently as in 2023. Well, folks, let me just say this. Again, you can watch the video on NJ Spotlight News' YouTube page. Again, and looking at Brianna Venozzi is pretty good television viewing. There are worse things in the world you could be looking at than Brianna. Certainly, so it's enjoyable to see her on my smartphone or MacBook whenever I'm looking at the news cycle in New Jersey. But folks, what's really interesting is, again, for a city like Newark, okay, whose literacy rate is down and crime is still running rampant in Newark. Okay, now mind you, I'm a guy that likes to go to Newark on a regular basis because I'm a diehard New Jersey Devils fan. And while I do my weekend, plan with them, I love going to the Prudential Center. It's a fun time. I love going to the bars near the Prudential Center, certainly to pregame or restaurants in the Ironbound. Shout out to Fornos of Spain, a wonderful restaurant that I frequent before every Devil home game that I attend. And certainly back in the day, Iberia. Sad to see that establishment close. All right. But what bothers me more, folks, is, again, priorities here. Now, let's also shave the apple down to what's really at the core of the matter. The left in New Jersey, if you left it up to them, they'd love to lower the voting age as low as possible, because what they want to do is indoctrinate your kids, right? We're seeing that in school districts, aren't we? Right? And thankfully, people and parents advocacy groups that won school board races, thankfully, across New Jersey a couple months ago, right? Even at the municipal level, turning more red, thankfully. Okay. Yes, at the end of the day, we all know what the left wants in not just New Jersey, but around the country. You lower the voting age, attempt to indoctrinate kids. That's what they're very good at. That's what they applaud. That's what they push for, and that's what they yearn for. Okay. Now, as I said before, in a city like Newark, that's still a dump. Okay. It's a pit to live in. Listen, I love going to Prudential Center. It's great to go there. It's great to go to some of the restaurants. Just go a little more north on Broad Street. Okay. Go on South Orange Avenue. Go on Springfield Avenue. Folks, you don't want to be anywhere near there. Okay. So in a city like Newark that is still there's an infestation of crime, where gun violence is still a serious problem. And mind you, the emperor and his lapdog, Matty Platkin, the attorney general, will have you believe that, yes, we're all about stopping gun violence. Yes, folks, because people that are committing gun violence in New Jersey are using registered weapons. No, they're using illegal guns. So they want to, while the left wants to lecture you about gun violence and gun control and responsible gun ownership, no, they're not interested in any of that. They want a virtue signal and take away your right to exercise your Second Amendment rights, how you see fit, right? But when it comes to a city like Newark with a literacy rate that's in the toilet, right? Because they won't tell you that. This is what the city council of Newark is focusing on. Folks, don't get fooled by the emperor that he wants to, motivate voter registration and voter engagement. No, he wants to help indoctrinate and help push for the left to indoctrinate your kids to policies that we know are hurting New Jersey. Okay. And thankfully, parents advocacy groups like Arise New Jersey, led by great citizens like Josh Akins and others, the New Jersey Project, Moms for Liberty, okay, Shout out to Alexandra Bauer with Moms for Liberty, the Bergen County chapter, Nicole Stouffer with the New Jersey Project. Again, these are organizations that care about your kids at the school board level. But the New York City Council doesn't care. They don't care about that. What they care about is trying to indoctrinate your kids so they can be more engaged about voting on issues that affect their school boards. What? How about focusing on literacy? How about focusing on making sure that these kids are prepared to go to college, whether it be community college or four-year college or university? Okay? That's what they should be focusing on. Okay? But meanwhile, when we look at, again, the useless 8 that I refer to on a regular basis, you look at their social media feeds, not a peep from them. Not a peep that 16-year-olds that don't pay a nickel in taxes want to have a say in how tax dollars are being spent at the school board level. See this, folks, this is what's rich. Okay? Again, credit to David Cruz, leaving his house in Greenville, okay, to go to the New York City Council meeting and then to go to Trenton. I mean, hey, shout out David Cruz, doing some work. Yes, a milagro. Okay? But where's the outrage about whether or not this is feasible? Whether or not this makes sense? Because when you look at the social media feeds of these guys, right? Not a peep. But I bet you, and I'll bet you any amount of money, right, that if young conservatives were out there mobilizing, they'd have an issue with it. Terrence McDonald, who's, again, salivating at the mouth for it to be June 1st, so he can virtue signal about, Pride Month and how bad he has it as a gay man in New Jersey, which he doesn't. He lives pretty well. Or Jay Lassiter, another one that I'm sure is salivating at the mouth for June 1st to come, so he can be like, yay, Pride Month. Okay? These two clowns, right? You would think that they'd be more concerned about this. But I bet you, folks, if it's young conservatives that want to vote, they don't want any part of that. Trust me. Okay? Or Chucky, Charles Style with the Bergen Record at NorthJersey.com. When he's awake, and he's not publishing sort of like whatever Trump derangement syndrome column that he likes to publish regularly. Or Alan Steinberg, who I think it's yet 7 o'clock. It's way past Alan Steinberg's bedtime. Okay, another Trump derangement syndrome clown in our establishment media. Okay. Or Max Pizarro, who, if you leave this house twice a year to do work, that's a miracle. Or Tom Moran, another intellectually bankrupt columnist for the Star Ledger, who, again, folks, it's funny, NJ.com will beg you in sending you emails, hey, please subscribe to to our great content, which it isn't, for only $1 a month. Yeah, sure, do that. And then once the second month comes around in the billing cycle, you'll get charged $25 to subscribe to just the mediocre content that NJ.com publishes on a regular basis. Okay. Or, Terrence McDonald with the New Jersey Monitor. Again, that'll embolden and empower flawed U.S. Senate candidates like Patty Campos Medina, who I wouldn't trust to run a hot dog stand. But somehow a woman with no experience in elected office is somehow qualified to run for the United States Senate? Really? But that's what people at the New Jersey Monitor will do, right? Like Sophie Nieto Munoz, another smoke show. Again, love to look at her on the TV screen when she's on there. I mean, who wouldn't when you look at Sophie? I mean, she's smoke, okay? She's really hot. Good to look at. But what are we doing at the New Jersey Monitor by empowering and enabling and coddling people like Patty Campos Medina, who doesn't believe in one policy that's ever made New Jersey better? Yes, she likes to coddle illegals. Okay? She likes to acquiesce to illegals. So does Larry Hamm, who's pretty much becoming the Hirsch Singh of the Democrat Party in New Jersey. Okay? What are we doing here? Is this who we're supposed to advocate for? But folks, again, this is my problem that I have with these 8. Okay? You should be more outraged about the fact that this is what the New York City Council is focusing on. Forget about this nonsense about, enfranchising 16-year-olds to vote. They don't pay a nickel in taxes. How does anyone think it's rational or even logical for kids that don't pay a nickel in taxes to have a say in how our tax dollars are spent? This is mind-boggling to me. But you read the social media posts of these 8 clowns, not a peep. Okay. David Cruz, when he's not sort of, struggling with what to order at the food court at the Gateway Center, okay, will sit there. And folks, if you watch that interview, folks, that was a disgrace. You had to sit there and laugh. When he's sitting there, and mind you, I'll give him his due. When he's interviewing someone like Andy Kim, cool, ask the U.S. representative some tough questions, which he did. When we have someone like Patty Campos Medina, who has no business running for elected office, again, I wouldn't trust this woman to program my coffee maker in my kitchen. And I just got a brand new coffee maker, which is really nice. But somehow she's a viable candidate for the United States Senate. Dave, ask some tough questions for God's sakes. Don't just sit there and coddle her like you do. I can't wait until he interviews Tammy Murphy. You want to see someone salivating? You want to see someone kissing up or kissing the ring? I can't wait until Tammy Murphy goes on David Cruz's show. That's going to be a love fest somewhere along the lines of, I don't know, watching MSNBC with people on the left and candidates for the Democrat Party. But again, for an issue like this, Newark is a dump. Okay? The literacy rate's in the toilet. But this is what the Newark City Council feels is their most pressing issue. And the fact that all of these guys behind me, right? Matt Freeman, who's up in the mountains somewhere smoking weed all day, all right? Caressing probably the only pussy in the house that cares to really be near him, his 6 cats. Or Tom Moran having his usual derangement syndrome that he has. Or Jay Lassiter, again, smoking weed all day and just living off his boyfriend's income. Okay? All of these guys, trust me, folks, if 16-year-old conservatives mobilized to vote, they'd have a problem with it. Trust me when I tell you, because they're not being philosophically consistent here, nor are they being intellectually honest. I mean, to ask that is like it's like asking the Mets to win the World Series. We know that's never happening either. Okay, but in a time, folks, where indoctrination of our kids is at an all-time high, we see it in school boards, we see it in Trenton, we see it with the Department of Education. This is what is the most pressing issue right now in New Jersey. And again, to expect the establishment media, the left-wing media, the aforementioned here, to ever question what the agenda is, folks, that's part of the problem. It's only journalists like yours truly that is questioning why the urgency for this. Because the left wants to indoctrinate your kids. They want to start as early as possible, folks, indoctrinating them into policies that we all know are destroying New Jersey. New Jersey has the highest property tax in the country. Okay? The gas tax isn't going away anywhere. Spending is still out of control. Folks, the budget in Trenton is getting fatter than the latest Victoria's Secret models out there. Okay? That are modeling lingerie. Don't believe me? Check out their website. All right? All in the name of body inclusivity. Jesus Christ. Okay. Trust me when I tell you, folks. These guys, as well as others in the establishment media, they have no interest in really talking about the issues that affect us every day. They really don't. And they should be leading the charge here as to why what the Newark City Council passed isn't productive. There are more important things to worry about, folks, in a climate where, again, we have the highest property tax in the country, spending's out of control in Trenton, okay? The gas tax is still there, all right? The left has never met a tax that they don't like. It's not people like me, folks. It's not people like Fernando Uribe for the last 20-something years that are making New Jersey unaffordable. It's not fiscal conservatives like myself that are having influence in Trenton about policies. It's not. I'm not part of the problem. It's the left that's part of the problem. And you would think that New Jersey, as it continues to become the dump that it is, as people are moving out of here because it's too expensive. You would think that these slapnuts behind me would be more indignant about it. No, they'll be more indignant about, Pride Month in 6 months, right? And I have to make sure that, there's a pride flag every square block, because if there isn't, oh my God, we're not acquiescing to gay people enough. Oh my God, what are we going to do? Right? Or coddling illegals like we're doing. And if we speak out against coddling illegals, which is what we're doing as a country with this joke of a president. Okay. These are the issues that aren't being covered. But the slap nuts behind me, no. They'll talk about enfranchising 16-year-olds because that's more important right now, folks. They'll talk about pronouns instead of property taxes. They'll be all virtuous on their social media. But are they even remotely interested in solving problems? No, folks. They're part of the problem. I'm just here to solve it. That's our show for this week, folks. I want to thank, obviously, John R. Heinis, the founder and editor of the Hudson County View, great local news site in Hudson County. You can check it out at hudsoncountyview.com. Folks, of course, you can check out all the great content available with Jersey First at, obviously, make sure you like us on Facebook. And, of course, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. You can follow my own handles as well. Make sure you click the subscribe button. You'll get notifications about all the great stuff we have on YouTube. And, of course, folks, wherever you get your podcasts on Spotify or SoundCloud, download Jersey First and take it with you anywhere at any time. I cannot say enough how proud I am to be on the dream team of Garden State Media, folks. That's right. It's Jersey First TV. Brand new episodes of the Nader Narrative premiere every Thursday. Of course, also hosted by the amazing Elizabeth Nader. And brand new episodes of Bridging the Gap with AJ Malillo and Stephen Rimbolo also premiere on Thursdays. And folks, you can always rely on brand new episodes of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe every Monday night live here on Jersey First TV. Folks, can't say enough how privileged I am to work with all of them. Of course, starting with my boss, the CEO and president of Jersey First TV, the very distinguished Rosemary Becky. Folks, always remember, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it is always Real Talk right here with Jersey First TV. I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, Top 50 Latino, as voted on by the Latino Spirit Online magazine, and also the United States Latino Affairs Initiative. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to be the weapon of mass disruption in Garden State media, because my level of honesty is necessary in this era of deception. That's right, folks. It's me, Fernando Uribe. Enjoy the rest of this Monday. Again, great to be off on MLK Day. Love the day off. Obviously, I'll always look forward to it in January. And folks, enjoy yourselves again. Check us out on all of our great content. And folks, we'll see you next week here on the latest edition of Real Talk with Jersey First TV. I'm Fernando Uribe, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your week. Please be careful with the inclement weather. And we'll see you next week. Always here for the latest edition of Real Talk via Jersey First TV. And thanks for stopping by.